Why should we stop watching red pill content? Meet Anti-Profit. With over 2 million subscribers online, he has built a reputation for challenging mainstream narratives and encouraging critical thought no matter your beliefs. He is on a mission to help people break free of limiting mindsets and think independently. In this episode, we debate the trap of creating your own meaning in life, the unlikely existence of your God, how AI intensifies ideological echo chambers, as well as Trump, Elon Musk, the laws of power, the shady billion-dollar world of the online guru, and whether red pill influencers have destroyed young men's mental health and ruined their future relationships.
Red pill is the type of thing that is a bit of a Trojan horse, right? The message that it leads with is very much like, hey, take responsibility for your life and make something of yourself. But after it kind of presents that first message, the deeper into red pill you get, the more you kind of get into this worldview where everything around you in the world is to be controlled. Mm-hmm. And that can be a valid philosophical view of the world, that like masculinity is ultimately about control and like about taking control of the things around you in the physical world. Like there is a philosophical slant, especially with people on the right who like argue that is actually a positive view of masculinity, even if society looks at it as if it's something that is manipulative and bad. But just in practice, I don't think that most people have the wherewithal to understand where is an appropriate line in your life to kind of draw with this type of thing and how to appropriately control things around you in a way that leaves you feeling good, leaves the other party feeling good. And that's the thing that I think red pill really leaves out most of the time, is they view relationships as a zero-sum game. When in reality, if you're going to have a successful relationship with anyone, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether it's in your personal life, your romantic life, your family, both parties need to feel good about the interaction and the communication over a long period of time in order to really get anything done. And again, like when you listen to like Myron Gaines or something like that, or Andrew Tate, they seem to consciously leave that part out because that's not as sexy of a thing to be able to sell people, because it's a lot easier to just be a fucking jackass to people than it is to kind of learn the ins and outs of the nuances of, you know, being in successful relationships with people.
Yeah. So is your main problem with red pill then perhaps that it lacks nuance? Or because what about people who would say, hey, I'm making more money now, I'm in better shape, I'm more attractive, you know, everything's good and bad, you know? So
for sure.
Yeah, is your main issue there with kind of like the nuance of it, and particularly around relationships? And I'd be curious to know where you've seen anything that has been damaging sort of play out either in your own life or relationships you've had where you're able to spot it and go, hey, that's like a red pill point of view that is now damaging a relationship. I'd love to hear an example.
Yeah, for sure. So regarding the first question, the lack of nuance is really the main problem with it. It's not a bad thing to go out and tell men, hey, like go get in shape, like go and try and make something of yourself in the world. Like that's never going to be a bad thing. But I think the way that it's communicated and the worldview that everything is a zero-sum game is something that will fundamentally put you at odds between yourself and everyone around you. And it just leads to short-term outcomes. And this is why we're seeing so many red pill thought leaders burning out. You know, like they had a shelf life of 3 years. And like, how long is Myron Gaines going to continue in the red pill space, like talking about the Jews? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, come on, dude. So that's the first question. Regarding the second question, the answer to that is yes. I mean, with Anti-Profit, it was kind of a weird experience because I think I need to take a farther step back. Back in 2020, I went through a really, really bad divorce and lost my relationship, lost my house, lost my job because of COVID, lost my 2 best friends that were like in the lineup at my wedding. Like it was a bad year. And as a result of that, I was really looking for answers as to why, like, what just happened to me, right? And the thing that I came across was like, hey, I need healthier boundaries. And then from there, I came across red pill content, which again, kind of leads with this idea that like people, like you shouldn't live your life on other people's terms. I think there's a positive thing that comes from like red pill ideology, right? But as a result of that, I ended up, kind of going down the red pill rabbit hole for probably 4 or 5 months until I got to the point where I was like, oh, okay, this is a little bit, the farther into it you get, the shadier it gets. There have been a couple of other things in my life that are similar to that, but we can get into that later. But I'm pretty good at identifying at which point a certain thought pattern is useful until it's not, right? But then from there, this is kind of around the time that I started doing anti-profit, and something that I built anti-profit off of was critiquing red pill content and sort of being red pill adjacent to a certain degree, still putting forth those ideas of like, hey, improve your life, maybe even like leave the US, get a relationship, get in shape, all that good stuff, right? And again, critiquing a lot of red pill content as a result of just my own content. But I think because of the fact that I was consuming so much of it, there was a bit of a remnant kind of left in the back of my mind. And I found that sort of red pill ideology playing out in like my relationship as an example, because even though I was critical of red pill, like there would be times when like my girlfriend would be hanging out with just like totally platonic friends and then getting home at like 4 p.m. and then 4 a.m. And then me being like, well, like, blah, 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 like yeah, you're going out to the club like without me. And in retrospect, like, I don't know, man, this is like one of the first people in my life that I would actually trust with my life. And I just trust 1,000,000% that this person wouldn't hurt me. Now, if you're viewing the world in such a way where all women are one way and it's just their female nature and no one is actually loyal to one another, again, just going around with that general mentality is really, really just, it's hard to actually interface with the world in reality in a way that attracts the right people to you. Because if you interface with the world in that way, you will end up attracting the type of person who is disloyal, who fits that worldview. And thank God, like this particular woman is just like so like endlessly patient with me. And as a result, this took a couple of months for me to really kind of pull apart. And this has been kind of a big thing inside of 2024, even with my content. It's just like, what direction am I going? What do I actually believe? So I know that was kind of a long answer, but that was a specific time and place where I ran into a big problem unnecessarily in my romantic relationship that was just totally caused by me and kind of caused by red pill.
Really interesting. It's kind of that idea of if you're thinking about red cars, you end up seeing all the red cars. So you start,
so weird.
You start spotting
I've seen that that example that you just gave show up like twice over the last 48 hours online,
really?
And then you bring it up here. That's so bizarre. Cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I fully agree with that. I agree that what you focus on, what you give energy to will grow in your life. And what it basically points to is perhaps pointing to an area in yourself that you need to develop. So if you think all, women are going to cheat, and I've had experiences like that as well that definitely hurt, then you will be given opportunities to resolve that within inside yourself. Your experience of reality, you'll keep seeing it because you're focusing on it. And those opportunities, those people, they're actually an opportunity for you to heal whatever's inside and become more secure, become more loving, whatever it is, dissolve it with love. That's interesting. So what I wanted to kind of throw at you is this idea of, like, we brought up Andrew Tate, and then I maybe like use someone like Donald Trump as an example as well. And it, perhaps more of these red pill figures. So what I often describe to people, perhaps girls as well, who, they maybe kind of spout that he's this, he's that, and they don't get why people respect Andrew Tate or Donald Trump. What I tend to respond with, it's just a thought that I am thinking, is that people respect them not because of everything they've done or because they necessarily agree with everything that they've done or all of their points of view, but what that person represents as masculinity is someone who is completely confident in their own worldview and lives out their own worldview in freedom. And whether we completely agree with that or not, there's always an element of respect that you'll have for someone who's like living in their truth, for lack of a better phrase. And so I wonder if kind of like the critique isn't necessarily against red pill as a kind of a broad term, but it's more, and perhaps this is part of the brand of anti-profit as well, it's more a critique against people buying into gurus and people buying into someone's point of view and worldview rather than developing their own. Because for you, example, you're a very intelligent person. You see the world and you're making your own decisions, you're carving your own path, you're doing your own thing. A vast majority of people almost need those, well, maybe that's not true, but it's helpful to have structure. I mean, that's what religion is essentially. It's like, hey, here's a broad set of morals. Like, it's not perfect, but go with this and things will work out okay. And you don't really have to think about it. But whereas someone like yourself, perhaps me as well, we like to pick into those things and be like, well, why? Well, why is that there? So I guess, yeah, my kind of question there is it less about red pill, more about kind of idolizing someone completely and not kind of looking inward? And then also, is there some benefit of having these kind of principles that you follow broadly for kind of like the general consumption, because they are somewhat helpful?
Mm-hmm. Good question. Okay, so this is what I would say in terms of like the manifestation of like Donald Trump and Andrew Tate and why people find them appealing. I generally think that people find them appealing because they are an expression of people's shadow side. They are an expression of who most people wish they could be. But my problem with that is that you are 100% correct when it comes to freedom. Being the type of person who can really just say and do whatever you want, many times without consequence, right? That is something that's extraordinarily appealing to people. And it's something that seems to sort of show a certain side of masculinity. The ability to go out into the world and to make it into the image that you want. My problem there is that these two guys do indeed have a certain level of freedom, but it's a freedom from. It is a freedom from the world that seeks to hold them back. It is not a freedom towards anything. It is a freedom for freedom's sake. And as a result, it becomes almost hedonistic. And I think this is something inside of the West, as an example, that we have really put up on a pedestal. The highest grossing industries are hedonistic industries: gambling, sex, prostitution, porn, social media. Mm-hmm. These are all addictive substances that we use day in, day out in order to basically distract ourselves from the fact that our life has very little meaning. And the reason our life has meaning has very little meaning, is because we're in this place where most people, I think you were correct in saying this, most people do need these icons. Most people do need these religious structures in order to provide them meaning, because going down the rabbit hole and finding your own meaning and charting your own path is one of the most difficult, brutalizing experiences that a person can like possibly go down. And most people aren't willing to do it. Like, and you know, Nietzsche talks a lot about you know, the Übermensch versus the rabble, right? And I think this is the primary distinction: is the rabble is the collective of human beings that aren't willing to go that far down the rabbit hole to really see who they are. Carl Jung has a great quote: "Woe betide those who live by way of examples." I can't remember the end of it, but it's essentially along the lines of like, you need to live your own life because you're the only one who can essentially be your own example. And, you know, I think as a result of that, when, again, getting back to the original question, it's like when people look at Trump, when they look at Andrew Tate, I think there is a lot of value of being able to look at those guys and sure, take some of the positive things that they might shell out. You know, this ability to go out into the world and create it in your image. But then that raises the question, is there perhaps a better way to do it than they're doing? That's the next question that's below that I feel like if you answer that question, then we start to have moral heroes in society that are people that we can genuinely look up to in every sense of the world. Every sense of the word. And to me, that's a more exciting society to live inside. And maybe that's pie in the sky, the utopia. But what if there was that person who was moral, effective, confident, masculine, that everyone could look at and be like, damn, that motherfucker's cool. Instead of a guy who is about to be sent to Romanian prison for being a rapist of like a 15-year-old. And that's our best example of saying, oh, hey, that guy's cool because he said like, oh, I should be a man, you know, like that's my primary critique of that. Okay. Hopefully that answers the question.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Let me know also if you ever want to take a drink.
I mean, I could just do it on camera and we could, here, shall we try it out? Let's see.
We can cut these.
Maybe delicious.
It could be wrong.
After that rant about Andrew Tate.
Yeah, mate, really, really interesting. Now, I've like a few things I'll probably throw back there. And I would perhaps suggest that part of the beauty of this, look, like you're absolutely right. Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, whoever you look at, Celine Dion, I don't know why that came to mind. Anyone who's like becomes part of like the collective consciousness, they are a reflection of kind of, we're giving them energy internally because of certain sets of beliefs. A group of us all hold, which is why they have attention. And when they have attention, that's when they get notoriety and have power, because we give it to them, right? It's that great thing. It's like, how would we actually dissolve governments? And it was just stop paying attention, just stop giving them the power.
Sure, yeah.
And we can do that. That's how powerful the collective is. But maybe something I'd throw back there is perhaps this kind of moral archetype sounds amazing, but maybe I would throw back that it will never ever exist, and that's actually kind of beautiful, and that we shouldn't actually be striving for that. All of these people are mirrors, and it's pointing back to something that we can look at in our own individual lives, and that's where change really, really happens. So my thought there is maybe it's the question is not, are we looking to someone who, and it could be interesting that you've done this with the brand. It's like, because you're faceless, it's like you are able to embody all of these things, or be kind of quite malleable as a mirror, perhaps. So yeah, my kind of question there is like, do we actually need that? And if we're not looking outside of ourselves for a moral standard, where should we look? So if we're not looking at Donald Trump, if we're not looking at Andrew Tate, if we're not looking at Celine Dion, where should we look at for a moral standard? God, religion, is inside. What does that even mean? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Well, I think collectively, in terms of like society is concerned, and I think this might happen more on a global level than it has in the past, just because the world is globalized at this point. Like social media exists, and I can post something and someone in Turkey can see something in the way that was not possible in the early 1900s, right? But I think the thing that we need to aspire to before we actually get that big collective thing is, again, looking within to actually figure out what works in our everyday lives. Because if you are able to solve the money problem in your life, the physical health problems in your life, if you're able to connect with the people around you because you kind of clean out all the gunk in here, a couple of things happen. Number one, you start interfacing with the world with a lot more power. And something that's funny when it comes to like betas or alphas or whatever, all of the real alphas that I've run into in the world who like really make like big boy money and like have happy families, they're not really online. They're not really participating in this cultural conversation, right? So that being said, getting back to what I was saying is like, if you figure out all of those things, you almost start to detach from everything that's happening online, and you are then able to, again, show up in the world in a real way, in a way that affects the things around you. And I think once that starts to happen, it's almost like the attention that we commit to the individual starts to play out in a collective way. Because when you go out and actually shape the world in your image, all of a sudden you're dealing with the collective. And I think human beings are really good at identifying what works and what doesn't. They're like, hey, does this feel good? No? Okay, well then I'll go and do something else, and vice versa, right? And I think if we can get to a place where, as an example, if a lot of people could even just like disconnect from the algorithm, from porn, from drugs, from alcohol, and make that choice to really just be like, okay, I'm gonna kind of ride this out for like 2 or 3 years. It's gonna suck, but like let's see what I find on the other side. Then they can find that out. It will clear out a lot of the gunk. They will interface with life in a much more effective way. And then all of a sudden, you kind of get into that cliche of like, a bunch of raindrops end up being the thing that comprises an entire ocean, right? Enough individuals start to do that type of thing that they can then bring what they feel to be is the positive individual archetype. And that starts to be the thing that fleshes out in the collective. And then from there, we can start having a cultural conversation about what actually works en masse. And on top of that, when you clear out that gunk inside of you, that is the only point at which you are able to have a conversation with yourself about what it is that you genuinely value. Like what are you optimizing around? What is your God? And that's a difficult question. That's a really hard question. Like, what is your God? If you can figure that out and then organize your life in such a way where everything is optimized around that top thing, that solves a lot of problems, because all of a sudden, if let's say there's like a little there's like a logic tree that grows out from that supreme thing that you are optimizing around, right? If you come down here and you run into something that could potentially be a conflict of interest between this thing up here and this thing down there, you no longer have to commit so much brain energy into whether or not this is good for your life, or whether or not like it's actually like achieving your goals or whatever, because you already know what your God is. And if something comes into conflict with that, you can make a really quick decision about like, okay, like cool. Like it's not an emotional thing. You're not stressed out about it. You're not lashing out to the people around you because you feel like other people aren't understanding you, or that you are feeling stressed because you don't know what to do about it. You just optimize your life in such a way where, again, the way that you're interfacing with the world is just a lot clearer and a lot more calm. And again, it gets back to this thing where you have to look inside first in order to answer these questions, in order to interface with society in the way that I think is possible. So is it a utopia? Perhaps. Again, Nietzsche really, really thought that like the rabble could not be saved. But maybe with AI, AI is playing out in a very negative way right now in terms of like how it works with our algorithms. We're unhappier. There's more conflict. Everything seems to be like falling apart all of the time, when in reality, in a lot of the places of the world, things are pretty okay. At the same time, we're on the verge of World War III. You know what I mean? But I feel like that technology is simply a tool that can be used in that negative way, or it can be used to positively complement the human psyche, maybe with something like Neuralink. Maybe something that's like open source rather than like closed source. Anyway, I've been ranting for a while, but hopefully this is all coming together.
Yeah. So I definitely want to go down the AI rabbit hole. I think we've got a really good conversation there. I want to first focus on this idea of your own God, and I want to have you read Law of One?
No, I haven't.
Really interesting. It's actually a channeled text, which is something I've been very skeptical about up until. But I've kind of been open-minded to and sort of listened to it. Very, very interesting. And kind of my sort of point off the back of everything you've said there of like knowing your own God, that's really interesting. It's because how do you know that that's not like an ego creation? I see a lot of spiritual people who create their own religion to justify behaviors they don't want to look at. Like in the name of liberation, will kind of take part in behaviors that are actually quite detrimental perhaps to their health and psychological well-being, but because they kind of created their own religion, created their own spirituality, they kind of have done this mental gymnastics which enables them to justify a lot of things. So anyway, the Law of One has kind of set out a lot of interesting things. Very hard to kind of go in and summarize it, but basically it's the idea of this kind of that we're all one concept, hippy dippy, it's all love, man. But something that I found really interesting, and I think it's from this, is this idea that obedience is total freedom. So obedience to God, whatever that means, is total freedom. And it's exactly your point. It's when you have that moral standard, that North Star, suddenly decisions, you're no longer, it's like you don't have to have decision fatigue. It's you have that North Star, and you know when situations arise in your life, things come up, you kind of know how to deal with it. So an example here is that, and this is another kind of thing kind of been playing around with as well, is this idea of sin. Obviously, and I'll tie this back to the kind of concept. So there's this idea like in the West that sin is kind of something that we're judged for. And it's obviously been used to control kind of societies in the past and get money. The Catholic Church is built on guilt, essentially, in my opinion. But this idea of Law of One and this idea that everything is love, the frequency of love, whatever that means. I don't know, I'm a human. But what's interesting about that is like sin doesn't make sense. If you view that as like God and you view that as your kind of North Star, that everything is loved. When you look at sin, it's not something that a God would be judging humans for. it's simply sin describes something that is separate from love. And not just for other people, but for yourself as well. For example, if I am lust, one of the 7 deadly sins, let's say lust, the idea of that being a sin isn't that if you are lustful, you are now judged for your lust. The idea is that this lustful behavior will boomerang back into your own life and cause more things that are kind of out of the frequency, out of the alignment of love. So therefore, you will now experience, because of that lustful action, it's not that you're judged for it, it's that it will now boomerang back and it will cause turbulence in your own life. And it's like kind of reframing this idea of sin, that it isn't something that you need to be worried you're judged for. It's just kind of like a guideline of like, hey, these behaviors will cause this output. And then you can do that if you want. Like, I'm not judging you. You can do that, but it will cause that output. So here are the suggestions. And yeah, for me, that's kind of like been really, really helpful, because I think religion, Christianity particularly, is seeing a bit of a boom, particularly among young men. But I still think that there's some very outdated ideas within it that are actually harmful, and we kind of need to, we'll kind of work through and kind of redefine. And that's one of them that, you know, it's same with lying, right? If you lie, it's like that hurts you. It hurts you as you are lying, because it comes back and now you are not in truth. Now you are creating a distortion in reality that is not real, and now you have to deal with that, and it will come back. So yeah, my kind of question there is like, when you say figure out your God, like, how can we do that in a way that isn't, everyone has their own God and it's like conflicting gods? And is there like some sort of united idea of God that we can all buy into?
Okay, well, now we're going to get into the schizophrenic rantings. I hope you're ready.
Let's go.
Okay, so in general, the way that all I can speak to on this front is like how I've interfaced with that question, right? Because I think when my life fell apart, the only thing that I had going for me that like I felt like was going to get me out of that rubble was some sort of internal voice, right? And the only way that I was able to interface with that internal voice effectively is when I would tell the truth to the people around me and to myself. And that was a very painful process, because the reason my life fell apart is because I lied to myself for like decades, really. If I really want to go back all the way to like childhood or whatever, that's where these habits start, right? And as a result of that, I ended up following that voice, and it brought me to Bali, built me Anti-Profit, made me a shit ton more money than I had ever gotten before. It brought me to my girlfriend. It got me sober. But at a certain point, once you start following that inner God, let's say, or well, I shouldn't even say you. Once I started following that inner God, I did get to a place where all of a sudden I kind of I almost became like a religious icon to myself to a certain degree. The way that I was showing up on Anti-Profit, creating videos, talking about things, like the vibe changed on Anti-Profit, and a lot of people noticed it. And as a result of that, I was making good money, and I realized that I could go farther down this path and honestly just end up in a situation where I was saying more outlandish shit, more really intense, like kind of like light fascist stuff, because that kind of thing would resonate with my audience. And it would make me a lot more money as well. And it would play into this idea that if I just follow my internal light, everything's going to be good, because that internal light is never wrong. But for whatever reason, I kind of put everything that I was doing on pause and took a step back. And that step back started probably back, like the grumblings of that stop started back in like February of 2024. And they have honestly gone on until like last month. And the reason I took that step back is because it's just something didn't feel right. I couldn't figure out what it was, but I knew that like there was something inside of me that knew that if I was going to go down the path of just like essentially just being Elon Musk and just posting like just a bunch of like unhinged shit with some good stuff, some unhinged shit, like it would have made me a lot more money. I would have gotten a lot more attention. I would have gotten a lot more following. And even like had I continued it to now, you know, with Meta saying, hey, we're not going to be policing as much content online. Like this would be like my golden era. You know what I mean? I'm just posting whatever I fucking want in order to get the attention, because the attention is where the money is, right? But I didn't do that, and I'm glad that I didn't. And as a result of probably 6 months of really just kind of sitting and thinking and being like, fuck, like, what do I do now? Because like I don't want to turn into the cautionary tale of the Lisan al-Gaib from like Dune, right? Where he basically becomes a religious icon, and then I think in the next movie he ends up like killing billions of people, and then he's like, oh fuck, like I don't think I should have done that, right?
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
I didn't really want to go down the Lisan al-Gaib pathway, and as a result of taking some time to sit and think about this, the thing that I ended up doing for a couple of months is just rejecting the entire idea of God totally. Because the way that I was interfacing with that voice in my head was honestly in the way that it was, it was still basically the Judeo-Christian God. That's the way that I was raised. And I wouldn't ever come out and say it to anyone, but I was interfacing with it as if it was like some like external God, basically. And as a result of that, when you have like God on your side, you can do a lot and not maintain that level of self-reflection because you don't need to, right? So I went for a couple of months just completely turning that voice off because I was like, no, fuck this. Like this is getting me to a place where I'm posting content that I feel like actually does like real damage to the world. Because I was posting like, hey, like maybe the Trump administration should go into martial law and basically like forcibly deport 80 million people by force. And if they don't, like they should kill them. Maybe bleep that part out. But like that's sort of the road that I was going down. Like race realism, like a lot of like just really like unhappy stuff. And I think the thing that I realized by taking a step back is like the reason I was going down that path was not because I actually genuinely believed it or because I was like following this voice or whatever. I was just really unhappy with where I was in my life. And I think that again, this is getting into the schizophrenic rantings. I hope this is okay.
This is great.
The other thing that I think is worth saying here is in the beginning of 2023 in January, that's when I got sober. Prior to that, I was an alcoholic. I was going out literally every night of the week, like 8 to 10 cocktails a night, going to bed at 4 a.m., waking up at 9 a.m. for work. Like that was my life. And I did that for months and months and months and months and months. And January 2023 came around. I got sober for a myriad of reasons, but the thing that really came up throughout sobriety is like I really had to deal with a lot of the reasons that caused me to drink in the first place. I'm a little bit socially awkward when I hang out with people in the real world. On top of that, there was a lot of pain that had been left over from my divorce, from my life falling apart that I hadn't properly dealt with as of yet. And when you're in that state of mind and you're pairing that with like, God is literally leading me, it's a problematic combination, and it ends up creating the type of content that I was creating, which was like very pandery, very much like, hey, let's create like a fascist authoritarian dictatorship in the US and basically like kill who we need to kill in order to get like our shit done. You know what I mean? And by taking that step back, I was like, look, this voice has like led me into like a really, really negative place. I need to shut that voice down. There is no God. Fuck it. Like I'm done interfacing with this. This has led me to a place that I'm not happy being in. So then from there, a couple months go by. And the other nice thing with that is I stopped posting to Anti-Profit, and I gave myself some time to breathe where I wasn't using work as a coping mechanism, as an addiction, in order to stave off like all of those things that I had been staving off for years at this point, because I went from alcohol to work. That's the way that I was dealing with those things. And at that point, once I stopped posting, I really had nothing. Now, luckily, because of some of the like emotional skills that I had built up over the last couple of years, it really took me about 2 months to kind of, maybe 2 or 3 months, probably 4 months. Okay, 4 months. 4 months to really kind of get to the end of that and be like, okay, the problem wasn't the internal voice that was leading me somewhere. The problem was all this residual shit that I was trying to pair with this and using that internal voice as if I was the expert, as if I was the leader. And the way that I ended up separating it out for myself is I went back to kind of following that internal voice, but I kind of blend this idea together of it being internal to me, but external at the same time. It is not me. It is something that like my conscious ego, like I can see the world version of me. Like I have to submit to that thing appropriately. I have to tell the truth to people in order to like properly interface with it. And like the times where this thing gives me advice and I go against that advice, it's kind of like what you were saying. It's not that like there's some like great sin being put upon me. I'm not guilty. But when I go out and do something else, it usually doesn't fucking work. Right? So it's just it's a matter of like workability rather than like feelings or emotions or guilt or anything like that. And again, that's why I say all of this is a little bit schizophrenic, honestly. But that's kind of the place that I've landed on with it now. And it's the way that I've answered for myself. Like, well, yeah, how do you not go into like your ego just taking over and basically like leading you into like what I could make a very profitable brand? You know, if I adopted like the current like conservative in the US archetype and just did what Benny Johnson was doing, just doing what Andrew Tate was doing what Elon Musk was doing, I'd have a much larger following now, excuse me. But I can't do that just like on a psychological level for me. I can't do it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Man. I want to go in after this. I want to go into us versus them marketing because I think that's very interesting. One from a, like you said, personal standpoint, but then also, a business point of view.
I got to get a hair out of my mask. It's gross. Everyone at home can take a look at this. These are the realities of wearing a mask. All right, let's go.
So definitely want to get into kind of us versus them marketing because this is something that I've actually built out a framework to kind of counteract.
Please tell me. Oh my God, this is one of the biggest things that I've been trying to like solve on my own side of things.
Yeah, we'll go into. I call it the brand vision framework, and I think it's pretty good. I'm still building it out based on different kind of character archetypes. What I wanted to kind of like respond to was your thoughts on God. They're moving from something external to something internal to something not at all. And here's the thing: I'm really interested in this concept of God because it just is interesting. Like again, I've been asking that question to myself for years now. It's like, why are we here? What's going on? And again, another Nietzsche quote: "It's like stare long enough into the abyss, and the abyss will start staring back at you." And there's a definite danger of when you go down this path. It's like a rabbit hole that opens up, and you kind of find nothing, looks back at you, and then you kind of have all these feelings of dread, and that can definitely be a part of it. And you really have to create your own meaning. Anyway, a few of the things, and again, when we kind of speak about God, it's very, very difficult because one, we're using a human word written in Latin phonetics to try and describe something that by definition is essentially indescribable.
Yep.
So we run into problems, and it's a loaded word as well, where God means so much. You know, people have bad experiences, people have good experience, people devote their life to it. So it's a very loaded term. A few quotes that have helped me with some sort of understanding of that personally. It's one in the prayer of St. Francis. There's a line which is, "Make me an instrument of thy peace." So it's like, your will be done. Make me an instrument of thy peace. And yourself as a musician, I have a background in the music industry as well. The idea that I kind of have come to there is that you are like a instrument. You're being used, you're being played, and you can make beautiful music if you play along with everything else. You know, in your life, you can express creatively. If you align with what the whole orchestra is trying to do, beautiful music will happen, not just for you individually, but for everyone. You know, that's when maybe that utopia, it's like when everyone can align with being used and devoting yourself to God, whatever that means, then that's when we perhaps have this chance at some beautiful piece of music. And what's very interesting about that as well, are you a fan of Lord of the Rings? And
yeah, for sure.
So Tolkien, obviously fascinating character, very drenched in the occult when you really look into it. He and C.S. Lewis, both good friends initially and until they fell out, but really, really there's a lot of occult stuff in there. If you look at his origin story of Middle Earth, he talks about these like angel Valar beings who like sung it into existence, singing sound frequency, and that there was this kind of like perfect harmony from all of these like whatever they're called angels singing into creation. Make me an instrument of thy peace. And then when evil came into his universe, it was when one of the angels started singing in discord, in out of harmony with everything else, and that's what caused the initial rift. And that's all it is. All that evil is just out of harmony with this kind of natural song of creation.
Evil is just a tritone.
Evil is just a tritone.
Nice.
That's a quote, yeah. Evil is just a tritone. So that's one thing that's kind of helped me kind of expand on this idea of what's going on. Also the book, The Tao Te Ching, something I've been really, really studying. I really like Chinese philosophy. That's fascinated me over the last few years. Then another kind of quote that comes to mind also is this idea, sometimes to define things, you can define them by what they're not. If there's something that's undefinable, we can maybe define it by what it's not. So there's this idea that anything that separates us is not of God. So that can be kind of your guideline, thermometer for, is this action or aligned with God? And it's like, is anything that separates us, is that of God? And the answer is anything that separates us is not of God. So it separates from us from ourselves, separates us from others. So I think that leads interestingly into us versus them marketing, which is very, very effective. The Matrix is out to get you. I think you said in one of your videos, if you don't make 10 million in the next 2 years, you're going to be controlled forever. Scarcity, urgency. There's so much. It's like, it's that there has to be an enemy in order for you to position yourself online or anywhere. There has to be like this enemy. There has to be this collective thing you're all against. You have to have like this cult-like kind of following, etc. And like you said, it works. It really, really, really works. The Matrix is a fantastic enemy to have because it's kind of indefinable. You can't pin it down to one person. It's just like this ominous thing that is always there and it's out to get you unless you buy this course. So it's very effective and kind of entertaining as well, to be honest. Sure. So far, with that kind of in mind and wanting to align your work with truth, align your work with something higher perhaps, how are you approaching that us versus them marketing, and what do you believe the antidote is for that currently?
I mean, I'm trying to get away from it. I think it's funny. When I first started studying like marketing or whatever, again, up until 2020, I was just a violinist. I didn't do anything when it comes to marketing. I didn't do anything when it comes to like the internet or whatever, right? But 2020 came along and I didn't have any gigs and I didn't have any students. So I was like, okay, well, fuck. I'm like making money from the government, so I might as well like learn something while I'm sitting around. So I went into digital marketing. And the thing that was interesting in retrospect is literally every book that I picked up on marketing emphasized this idea of like us versus them marketing. Russell Brunson, Dan Kennedy, Jim Edwards, like all of these like people who like build a career around like marketing and like sales copy. There has to be an us versus them. And as a result, like the way that I participated in marketing and actually like marketed like the things that I did was very much just like utilizing that model. I was like, okay, well, this is like how it's done. So like, this is literally everyone is saying it. So this is how it's done. Yeah. Right. And again, that's kind of like how I built out a brand with Anti-Profit. It's like, oh, like the trans are like coming to get you, or like the, whatever I happen to be talking about in a particular video. And again, at the time, I really did believe it. But in retrospect, this had to do with kind of where I was emotionally in my life and the way that I saw the world. And as time has gone on, this is the kind of content that I don't want to do as much. And honestly, man, my answer to this right now is, it might be a little bit unsatisfying to hear. My answer to this right now, at least in the short term, is just not sell products, is to just not sell like a course, to not sell a community. Take brand deals, where people can like watch an ad if they want to or skip it. But the type of messaging that I put inside of those things is very much, I can't remember the guy's name. Have you come across he has kind of a small YouTube following now. I think it's like 50, 80,000 followers, maybe more at this point. But basically all he does is he has a whiteboard in front of him and he's based in Dubai. He's really successful at what he does.
Will Brown.
Huh?
Will Brown.
No, it's not that guy. Cause you
had Will Brown.
Yeah. Not him.
Charlie Morgan.
Yes, him. I went to one of his websites a couple of, this must have been months ago, but I went to one of his websites, and the way his VSL opened was, "Hey guys, what's going on? This is a sales video. If that bothers you, then probably leave this page. But the problem that we're looking to solve here is XYZ." I saw that shit and I was like, "Oh my god, this is the way." And as a result of that, I tried to employ that type of messaging in a B2C context where I was selling to like mostly consumers. It wasn't B2B, right? But that messaging wasn't effective for people. The thing that I realized just with all the iterations of like the types of selling that I was trying to do, specifically with like a specific course, and I guess you could make the argument that the course, the community, the product itself it just didn't have great market fit. So maybe like any type of messaging that I was going to bring was just going to be doomed to fail. Could be that, right? But the thing that I found is I always made better sales with that community when previously I was like, look, the world is falling apart. You need to protect yourself now. Get in the community before it's too late. I made better sales with that than when I sat down and was like, hey, look, this is a sales video. What you're going to learn from this is like X, Y, Z. And I think, again, that kind of gets back to the original point. It's just like, what do most people want right now? What do most people want to optimize their lives around? And most people want to optimize their lives around being hypnotized, whether that's in a sales context, in a porn context, drugs, all the stuff that I've named multiple times at this point. People want to be hypnotized because they want to distract themselves from the fact that they don't know what their life is actually for and what it is that they're actually optimizing around. And as a result, again, getting back to your question, like, how am I dealing with this as a business owner at this point? I'm just completely going into B2B, because like B2B people know why they're spending the money. They have budgets. They have like real expenditures and like finance reports that they need to like come up with in their finance department at the end of each month. So as a result of that, I feel like I really can lean into, in fact, it's incentivized in a B2B context for me not to do like the salesy gimmicky, like, oh, like you got to do it now or like whatever, right? I can just be like, hey, look, here's the problem that I'm solving for you. Here's the like basically guaranteed return that you get from this. Do you want to do business? Yes or no? And that to me, it like is just the way that I've solved the problem for myself in the short term. Maybe there's a different way to solve the B2C problem in the long term, but excuse me, I don't think that's going to be possible for as long as people optimize their entire lives around being hypnotized.
Some really interesting insights there. Really interesting. And it's right, okay, because, B2B, it's much more a logical decision. Am I going to see a return of investment on this investment? Okay, yes, let's do it. And then everyone wins. We're all making money. Cool, abundance. But to get to that point as a business owner or, marketing executive who's making those decisions, you've had to kind of overcome a bunch of limiting beliefs yourself to even be in that point. And then obviously the issue with B2C perhaps is that it's a much more emotional based decision. And a lot of the coaching you probably need from the program is like, it's a lot of breaking your limiting beliefs, changing your worldview.
It's getting people from 0 to 1 as opposed to in the B2B, getting people from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
The thing that I've realized is getting someone from 0 to 1 is so much harder than getting someone from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
If you have a fire already going, let's just throw some fucking gasoline on it. I like if I need to be the one that teaches you how to forage for wood in like the forest when it's raining outside, like we're fucked. You're going to have a bad experience working with me because you're not actually going to get the result that you're looking for. And maybe people aren't actually looking for results. Maybe people just want community. Fine, cool, whatever. But like just the way that my brain works, like I feel like I'm a bad business owner if I'm not getting people the actual result that whatever it is that I'm selling like purports to give. Like for me, community and connection is not enough. And that's just a personal thing. Some people really just, that's all they need. So that's what they sign up for. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that I wanted to hop in with that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like the idea is like, okay, is there an argument for with us versus them? It's like, you kind of use this as marketing. It's like sell them what they want and then give them what they need, right? So is there an idea that perhaps like, okay, let's play the fucking game, get the attention. Now, hey, this is what you actually need. Look, yeah, I poked some of your buttons, but look, you're here now. And like, this is what you actually need. Here's the raw reality of it. Okay, maybe some people respond well to that. Maybe some people feel that they've kind of been betrayed in some way, potentially. And then the other idea is like you spoke about is how can I be for things, not against things? Is that, can I be a brand that's for something, not against something? Is that possible? And you said that you had better sales when you were against something. I presume obviously like mean larger volume of sales when you were against something, more attention, so more come through. But okay, I would maybe say not in terms of the people who came through, perhaps not better like sales, better clients, like because they're focused on kind of like what they're scared of. So maybe like it's interesting to me anyway of building this conversation around like an aspirational identity and like a vision. Like you said, it's like how can you sell an individual their own vision? How can you kind of give them the tools that they need to craft their own vision and then give them the belief to start acting on it. And then when they start acting on their own vision, and because you've kind of given them the tools and belief, that's when they kind of naturally gravitate towards you to continue working with you. And I try and do that with like things I've run in the past is like, okay, rather than be against things and, the same old tropes about escape the matrix, it's like, okay, well, what are you specifically for and how can I help you get there? How can I develop you as a leader? I think that's like an interesting question, but again, it doesn't quite it's not the thorn in your side. So Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think that it's worth seeing if it can be done, because then people are making decisions not out of fear, they're making decisions out of growth and, wanting to improve. And again, you can make the against, the us versus them, you can kind of almost point it inwards. You can like point it towards aspects of yourself rather than like an out group that we're against. It's like a behavior, perhaps like something we know that is not in truth or alignment. It's like, well, maybe that's our against. Mm-hmm. It's personal things that we do, lying. That's we make it all internal, make it all about the self. I think that's potentially an interesting way forward, but it's not as sexy. Maybe sometimes it's just play the game.
Yeah. Well, the enemy that I'm going against at this point, at least with my messaging, is very much the algorithm. That's going to be the new enemy that I come up with, rather than the matrix, rather than the trans or like whatever, right? It's going to be.
I just love this idea of like the trans army, like just they're out to get you.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, that's in a lot of cases that really is the visual image that comes to mind for a lot of people. That's what they feel like they're fighting against, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the algorithm, based on what it prioritizes, based on the fact that it is set up in order to maximize session time, in order to sell ad dollars on these platforms, and as a result, it pushes forth the most upsetting content, like the content that gives you like the biggest emotional rise, either in a positive or negative direction, and positive dopamine, or like angry, like, oh fuck this person, whoever I'm like seeing on my screen, right? That's going to be the enemy that I go against, and I feel like, again, in terms of like comparing this to what I was doing earlier, this works better because it's not me creating content being like, we need these type of people out of our country. That's really the type of content that I was creating. And that's like that you take that to its logical extreme, that's some scary shit. That's like genocide shit, right?
Yep.
So with the algorithm, this in my mind starts to invite a conversation about how we interface with technology, how we build out technology to reflect the values of our society. If we don't know what our values in society are, how do we actually start to get ourselves to a place where we can even participate in that conversation? Again, that cuts back to what I was saying a little bit earlier. Getting your health in order, getting your relationships in order, getting your money in order, and like very basic, like like do crypto like ways, you know what I mean? So like solving those in order to kind of have this algorithm question. And then from there, I think in terms of trying to sell people a product that maybe caters, it gets a little bit to what you were talking about in terms of like selling people the thing that they feel like they want, but giving them what it is that they actually need. Like figuring out how to overlap the circle of people feeling like they look good to other people with whatever primary goal that you're optimizing your life around in like your own personal life. And that you feel like if everyone were to do that thing, humanity would be going in a more positive direction. How can you get those two circles to overlap completely? That right there is also a big question that I'm working on. Like, how do you appeal to people's like basest desires, but kind of sneak in what they need through the back door?
So there's a Teal Swan quote, and I really like her. She's awesome. So,
yeah, she was actually, I think she's from Logan, Utah, which is, I'm from Salt Lake City, and I went to college in Logan. So
she has an really interesting story and upbringing. One of her lines in one of her books, if your job does not fit the definition of play, you have not yet lined up with what you are meant to be doing here on this planet. So based on what you've just said there, how are you optimizing for joy, fulfillment, play, in what you're doing as well in your creations?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I just try to consume as many drugs as possible. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's a good question. It's a question that I've actually had to start answering for myself a lot more since I've like kind of gotten sober, I guess you could say, from being a workaholic. Because like that was something that my girlfriend has brought up a lot. It's like, hey, like I'd like to go more places. And like she doesn't bring it up in like the stereotypical like, oh, I want to go to like the Kempinski, or I want to go to like Dubai or whatever. She's just like, hey, can we like go to like I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like somewhere on the island. Cedarman. Can we like go to Cedarman for a weekend and just like get a place? And when I've been in this like really workaholic phase, I'm just like, no, I have to work. I'm really sorry. Even though I have the money, I have the time. but like psychologically, I can't like let go of what it is that like I'm working on because I'm so afraid of everything falling apart that that I can't like rationalize going on like a weekend trip or whatever. So coming out of that mentality, like this again has been like a little bit painful because I've had to like really answer for myself, like, okay, what do I like doing? What do I feel like would be a good use of my time? What type of people do I want to be friends with? Especially coming from a place where I essentially started drinking in the first place because I felt like I was awkward with people. You know, like, do I even have the ability to like interface with people like normally, naturally, in a way that we're not talking about like schizophrenic gods in our heads? Like, I want to go and like sing karaoke with people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think for me, what I've answered so far is I really like the gym. I like going and sitting on Echo Beach on those like concrete stairs at around sunset and doing the same thing at Prayer and On at the statue. I like doing that at sunset. I like reading. I like going on drives like outside of Canggu, just driving. I like pizza late at night.
Nice. I like pizza too.
Yeah, it's good shit. Doughboys. Shout out Doughboys.
Okay, I haven't tried it. Yeah.
You should try it, dude. That shit is amazing.
Fuck yeah.
And yeah, just kind of like trying to start to identify like those little things. I think when my girlfriend gets back, we're gonna probably take up some paddle.
Nice.
Just because like some friends are putting together a group. My girlfriend has wanted to play paddle for a while, so I'm like, okay, cool, let's go do that. It's also just a matter of like trying things out. But I think the biggest thing that I've been sort of wrestling with again is just like over the last couple of years, I've been muting emotional feelings, whether that's in like the positive direction or the negative direction. I've just tried to stay here because I went down here for so long and it was so fucking brutal and painful that I was like, fuck that. I'm like, I don't care if like my lows allow me to experience like big highs. I don't fucking care about that. Keep me here. And I'm coming out the other side of that where I'm like, okay, like I think we can at least like do this.
I love that, man. Mate, that's awesome. I'm going to send you a place in Munduk as well. Yeah, went with my girl the other week, and it was stunning. You'll love it.
Yeah,
she'll love it as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah, let's go into relationships a little bit, and I like this idea of again talking about what are you for, not what you're against, and like kind of having a clear vision of like the type of partner you want in your life. I think that's interesting. And I also want to, I watched your video, How to Get a Girlfriend in 3 Steps, and I wanted to ask you about how do you get a girlfriend who is kind of like the right type of girlfriend, and why should people delete dating apps?
Yeah.
I'll say that again. Why should people delete dating apps?
I think the dating apps, the dating apps can honestly be a useful tool if you interface with them correctly. I'm assuming we're mostly talking about like how men should deal with them.
Yeah, women.
Okay,
let's
cool.
go for that.
I have a completely different answer for how like women interface with them, but let's talk men. So most of the time, the way that this works for, I would say the majority of men is they get on a dating app, right? And they swipe. And by the end of like 1,000 swipes, they might have like a few matches with people that they're not really interested in. And most of those people end up ghosting. And then the one date that they go on, like it's usually not like amazing. You know what I mean? So that's a very demoralizing situation to put yourself in. You end up coming out the other side of that, not feeling super good. And the thing with Tinder is if you're not a very good looking guy, like your entire experience is optimized around you feeling that way, because that's how Tinder actually makes money, right? It's to get you to the end of those 1,000 swipes with 0 matches so that you're like, oh shit, maybe I should pay $15 a month for this. You know, like that's the entire business model.
Brutal. Yeah.
So again, like, is there the possibility of indeed subscribing to Tinder for $15 a month? Maybe hiring out like a VA in the Philippines to like do the swiping. And then like, if you happen to come across like someone who might be a good fit for you in while simultaneously that's going on the side, you're going to the gym. Like, you're trying to work on the money. You're like walking up to people and having conversations in person, you know, like ultimately dating is just a sales funnel, right? And the more like lead sources that you can have, the better. But you have to treat it in the same way that I treat like getting leads from Facebook ads as opposed to like Instagram DMs. I don't give a shit where the leads come from. I just need them to be qualified.
Yep.
Right. So again, it's not that everyone should just delete it. It's just that no one is really going to go out of, like, very few people are going to go out of their way to not only optimize their sales funnel when it comes to dating, and also optimize their product, which is them, on the back end, so that people want to buy.
Yes.
But I think from there was another question you asked. I don't remember what it was.
Let's go from there. That was awesome.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I love that. And I was going to respond with that optimize for the product. That's how you become attractive. Optimize for the product, make a valuable product. And I'm in agreement. I deleted dating apps a while ago, never really enjoyed them. But the one, I did have a little cheeky funnel set up on Hinge that I found worked quite well. And it was all based on the idea that, exactly like you said, your insights, work on the product, work on yourself, get your money up, get your body up, get your general charisma up, work on yourself, work on yourself. If you're not attracting the type of people that you want to be with long term, then that's nothing to do with the apps. It's to do with you. It's like, okay, what do I need to work on? Focus on that, focus on that, focus on that. So what I would do with Hinge, and I quite liked Hinge, I would never ever like anyone. So my rule was never ever ever like anyone on Hinge. Only allow people to like me. So it's like, who is taking the first step and like being attracted to me? And then I would have such a simple thing. They would usually like message, hey, whatever, da da da, blah blah, hey, blah blah, and then straight in with a voice note. So cut the like chit chat, straight in with a voice note, like, hey, barely on this app, blah blah blah. Look, you look kind of interesting. If you fancy grabbing a coffee, going for a walk, whatever it is, drop me your number and we'll sort it out. One, it's just like immediate. It repels the people who aren't interested at all. Then those who are, they're like, oh yeah, sure, send the number. Then give them a call. Just be like, hey, it's Tom. And they're like, oh, they're either like, who? Or you're like, hey, it's Tom. And then they're like, oh yeah, cool, awesome. And then you arrange, you go on a date, and you just optimize for going out and actually seeing someone in person. I don't want to talk to people on the internet. I really don't. That's for me personally. And I actually had I dated some great people like that, and it was kind of effortless as well. Yeah. And the focus wasn't on me being on these apps. The focus was on how am I working on myself. And if I don't like the people who are attracted to me, that's because you're not
bringing the right product to the table.
The product isn't good enough yet. So I found that, really, really, really helpful. And also, it's perfect for marketing as well. That's how I try and operate any business I'm involved with. It's like, make sure you focus on the product, focus on delivery, and it's the same as dating. It's 100% as dating.
100%, man. Like with one of the big things that I've learned, not just in Anti-Profit, but with other projects that I've been a part of, is if you have a good product on the back end, like marketing becomes a lot easier. If you're constantly trying to figure out different ways to like market something because nothing's working, it's usually, it has nothing to do with your sales funnel. It has to do with your product.
Your product and your belief in the product, right? If you know you're an awesome person / you have an awesome product, like, yeah, you want it? It's great. You're welcome. That's literally it. That's it.
And with the dating, the nice thing here that I feel like is a real white pill for people when they hear it is, when it comes to business, like, you make one sale, what's the next thing you do? Go and find the second sale and the third sale and the 1,000th sale and the 10 millionth sale. When it comes to dating, you just need one qualified customer that like works for you long term. Now, I remember the first part of your question, which is like, how, like, once you get the date, then like, how do you kind of make sure that, you know, you're dealing with someone that is who you want to be with? And I think, again, this has a lot to do with figuring out like what your God is. What are you optimizing around? And as a result of like answering that question, you'll know what you need from a partner. Something that I need is I need someone who's kind, man. I need someone who laughs at my jokes. Bro, that is so important. My girlfriend is watching this and cringing right now. I need her to laugh at my jokes. Like, I need that. I need someone who like tells the truth.
Yeah.
And like, where we both like really value the truth. I think her and I have probably lied to each other in total over like 2 years, like maybe once each or maybe twice each or something. But, and like both times, like we like came clean about it. We both like started crying. We're like, oh, look, I'm sorry. That was my bad.
Yeah.
And it was like within, it was like it was a very quick turnaround.
Yeah.
To do that. Except for one, that was my bad. It took a couple months, but we eventually got there. Right. But as where was I going with this?
What should you look for long term?
What should you look for? So those are things that I personally look for. A really great sheet, which maybe I'll send to you.
Yeah, let's have it.
And you can put this on screen for everyone because it's a really good one. I came across this sheet just like about healthy boundaries back in like 2017. And this is when or 2019. And I was still with my ex-wife at the time. And I'm not shitting you, dude. Like I came across this and I read it. And like the way that it's structured is it has like all of the healthy boundaries on one side of the page and then all of the corresponding like unhealthy boundaries on the other side of the page. And I think there are like 15 different selections here on each side. And I'm not shitting you, dude. I got to the end of this. I like ticked off every single unhealthy boundary that was like on this list. Like to give you an example, like you can say no or yes, and you are okay when others say no to you. That's a healthy one, right? Unhealthy. You can't say no because you're afraid of rejection or abandonment. So like, I don't know. I got to the end of this particular list and I was like, holy shit, am I actually not as like fucking free or like well put together as I thought I was? And indeed I wasn't. And honestly, that list was like the beginning of me like kind of having to like walk away from my entire life, which was the most brutal experience of my life, to then build out what it is that I have now. So I think if you are in a place where you're just not really in a place to really answer the question of like, what is your God? Start with the sheet. Like really, I'll send it to you, put it on screen. It's fucking tight. And just start with that. See if you can get entirely to the healthy boundary side of things. Because the cool thing about this sheet, maybe rounding this back to the beginning of the conversation, is you can do all of these things without being manipulative or controlling or feeling like women like need to be like XYZ in order to be like a good like wife or whatever. It like you can get to the end of this and have the appropriate boundaries that Red Pill espouses without like turning into a psycho.
Yeah. So awesome, man. I mean, I look forward to going through that myself and probably looking at me like, damn, I still got that one.
I still look at it and I'm like, oh, fuck, that one I need to work on. Yeah.
It's awesome, man. I've recently got into a relationship, early days still, going really, really well.
Right.
She's awesome, man. And again, like I have my kind of list of like old relationships and I now know what I don't want.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, now I know that's great. That's contrast. That shows me what I do want. I had kind of my list and really, she takes everything. It's amazing, man. Like she cooked my housemates eggs the other day. They were all super happy about it. Like, she's making us protein. Then she came into my room. I'd just come off a call and she sent me a lead. I was like, you're perfect. Like, it's amazing. Nut. Yeah. Well, maybe. But I was like, great, you're amazing. She's awesome, man. But what I would like kind of say, even from like the short time we've been kind of like together, it doesn't mean when you say like the perfect person, perfect relationships, there's still issues, my own issues that are being brought up within a relationship. And I'll frame this again from Teal Swan, who I really love. She has this great analogy. And in past relationships, because it hasn't worked out with, in a past relationship, the reason you're not still together, it didn't work out in some capacity, you will have some wounding from that relationship. You will have some things that you'll need to process. So you maybe come out of the relationship, you do a lot of work on yourself, whatever it is, you get your money together, you get this together, you're in a better place. You do a lot of healing outside of being with someone. But here's the example. If I get into the sea and have a terrible experience in water because of the waves and there's a whale and it hits me or something, I don't know, and I'm now terrified of water. So I get out of the water, okay, it was a traumatic experience, but I work on myself, I'm doing all these things, but I avoid the water. In order for me to fully heal that fear of the ocean, that fear of the water, you can avoid it your whole life, or you can get back in, and that is the only way, and you'll realize it wasn't so bad. Or you'll have a different experience which helps you heal the experience you had before. And it's the same with the relationships, right? When you get into them, even if you've done all of this healing outside of it, there will be things that come up because you're in the context of a relationship again, because you need to be vulnerable, X, Y, and Z, your wounds that you hadn't looked at, they will come up. And that's good. Like, that's good. There will be confrontation, hopefully not like shouting wise, but there will be things where there is some sort of conflict. But one thing that's really helped me reframe that is any conflict in a relationship is an opportunity for deeper connection. Okay, there's an opportunity for separation there, which a lot of people kind of go down that path. But if you spot any conflicts in your relationship, don't view it as like, oh, maybe this wasn't the perfect person, like they're making me feel slightly uncomfortable. That's good. You have these wounds, you have these things that you need to work on still, and you're back in the water, and you had a hard time last time. That's fine. But now this thing is coming back up. Can you meet it with love? Can you meet it with connection? And yeah, one of the great things about this girl I've been seeing recently, we've had a very mature approach to that. And like you said, anything that's come up, it's been dissolved very, very quickly. And for me, that was one of the biggest things. It's kind of anything that comes up, being with someone who's mature enough that we can kind of both understand our own flaws and our own fears and go, hey, this is coming up for me. Yeah, this is coming up for me. Show compassion, show love. And now you understand each other more deeply. There's a deeper connection. And I think that's something that's maybe advice I wish I had had sooner, and not once I'm with someone, not being like, oh, well, I'm feeling a bit like this, so maybe they're not the right person, I can fuck off. Like, that's avoidant, right? Yep. I'm going to find someone else. So yeah, curious if you've got any thoughts there.
Yeah, 100%. I think ultimately what it is that we're doing here when it comes to relationships is like we're practicing like kind of spiritual eugenics. I know eugenics is kind of a scary word for a lot of people, and rightly so. It's a fucked up thing in the 20th century. But when it comes to like spiritual eugenics, let's say, this idea that you bring yourself together with another person where the entire purpose of the relationship is to help each other overcome your shortcomings and your blind spots. That is the entire fucking point, because the next point from there is to have children who can then go out into the world and bring forth a better future in general. Now you might even ask, like, after that, what's the point of having children that like bring forth a better world? If everything is just going to end in like 1 billion years or whatever, then like what's the point? And to me, and this maybe gets back to, you know, my highest good, the highest thing that I'm sort of optimizing around is like, ultimately, when you boil everything down, there are very few questions that I've come across in life where you can really boil it down to like either just like you're either this type of person, you're this type of person. The only thing that I've really come across where it's really just those two questions and there's nothing else is when it comes to having children and creating a better world and them having children and continuing to do that into the next 10,000 million years, whatever. The fundamental question is like whether or not you think that humanity should take another step forward, or if you think that it should just stay stagnant in place and die off. And when it comes to choosing that, you can come up with a whole bunch of different rationalizations of one version or the other, but ultimately it's really just like, do you choose to take a step forward or not? And I think that in a way, this is like very like, I don't know, like, I feel like the way that people who came before us like interfaced with that question in the exact same way is just like you're either going to take a step forward because everyone else did, or you're not, or you're going to take a step forward because there's no other choice to make than to take that step forward or to sit in place. And if you are fundamentally the type of person who chooses to take that step forward, that there is fundamental value in doing that, even if you don't know where things end, even if we all end, but that step forward is fundamentally good and valuable in and of itself, then you have to set up your life in such a way where you attract the type of person that you trust in order to bring out the best in you so that you can create that child who will bring out the best in the world. And ideally, we keep giving ourselves the chance for the next billion years to keep taking that step forward.
There's some wisdom there. Is that then, you said the two types of people that you've met, is that a question of optimism versus pessimism?
It could be. It could be the... Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to generalize it. You either think that like existence is worth bearing and kind of pushing forward through, or you don't, right? Like that's it. That's it.
Is this worth pushing forward through? Is such a good way to put it. I've definitely had those mornings when you wake up and it's like, is this worth doing?
It? Bro, this sucks.
Am I going to do it again? Louis C.K. has a great bit about that. He's like, the world is just full of people who've decided that they're not going to kill themselves. Yeah. Like, it's like, I'll do it again. Like, yeah. I know he's very kind of cynical in a lot of ways. And he's like, fuck it. I'll just do it again anyway. I like him. Man, let's get into AI. I wanted to kind of frame this around AI as a creator. How do you see AI as an opportunity and also as a danger for someone like yourself, like me, like a lot of the people listening who the reason they want to get into kind of like the creator space is because it kind of enables you to define the reality that is interesting and satisfying to you. You can define your own freedom perhaps through this avenue of the creator economy. How do you see AI coming into this? Where do you see opportunities? Where do you see perhaps dangers that people don't realize? What's your take? I know you have lots.
Yeah. So I think I kind of alluded a little bit to how I view AI at the moment in terms of how it's currently used inside of the algorithm, and it's all bad. I actually don't think that there's anything good about the way that AI is currently employed inside of the algorithm because it has developed a media ecosystem, especially inside of politics, where creators are incentivized to say the most outlandish, like vitriolic shit in order to get followers. And even when they might be in a place where they don't genuinely believe it, because their entire livelihood is basically set upon this thing where like the thing that causes them to continue living and breathing and like having money and like being able to take care of their family is whether or not they continue to get views and likes. That media ecosystem, that algorithm warps the type of content that they end up putting out over time because they end up valuing the dollar over artistic creativity. Because when they actually go in the direction of like doing what it is that they really, really want to do, or let's say they start out by doing something over the course of like a year and a half, right? But then like we all change as people. They want to do something else. They can't. And when you stick around with an idea and that idea starts to wear out its welcome, that idea begins to become severely distorted because it's no longer something that you genuinely believe. It's something that you are pigeonholing yourself into in order to keep like the material things going on in your life. And again, to a certain degree, I really, really don't blame most creators because I think most creators fall into this trap kind of unknowingly. For the same reasons that I said that I don't think most people like really like take the time to like really think out their lives in the first place. And that's not really like a dig. It's just like people have shit going on. People have very real things that they're trying to solve and they don't have the bandwidth to like take on this question, right? But then there are other content creators who I think really understand exactly what they're doing. They understand the economics of it and they understand exactly how to manipulate a mass psychosis on people in order to get clicks, in order to be notorious online. And I think if there's any real true expression of evil, it's that, because it's the type of thing where you're setting up the world to not just like stop walking forward, but to take a step back in order for you to maintain your own like material gain. Like that to me is just like crazy unhinged, you know? So again, this is the way that the algorithm works currently. However you can get an emotional reaction out of people, good or bad, and most of the time getting people to really think about something deeply in a piece of short form is like impossible. You have a minute. So you either have to go the dopamine route or you have to go the direction of being like, hey, look at this fucking fucked up thing that will like show you how bad your reality and your world and your society is. Like, okay, cool. That's terrible, right? Now, in terms of like, in terms of ways that AI is very, very cool and has like a lot of cool use cases, is, you know, we're heading into a year where for the first time ever at a consumer level, people are going to be able to create, like, if they really wanted to, people could create and release 10,000 videos a week on social media in order to amplify their message. And from there, that's really going to be a matter of, it's not entirely good or bad, I guess. It's just like, it's an opportunity for people who are a little bit more mindful to put out that amount of content, to spread their word, to spread their thinking to a larger amount of people in like every language in the world if they wanted to. And, you know, that does kind of get into what I do think currently exists as a bit of a zero-sum game. People have a finite attention. The goal on social media is to really like get as much of that attention for yourself. But it's kind of what I was talking about a little bit earlier when it comes to the way that I'm approaching products. Is like, can you take the circle of like appealing to people's basest desires, but also like giving them the thing that they actually like need, and that would actually make society better. If you can pair that with this newfound AI that allows you to source a million different video ideas, generate those scripts, create an AI generated avatar version of yourself that can create 10,000 videos a week. And then, or excuse me, let's say 800 videos a week, and then use something like 11 labs to translate those into like the top 20 languages on earth. Then you're really starting to play around with like 10,000 videos a week, 40,000 videos a month. And then you're dealing with things at scale. And this is the way that TikTok marketers who are doing like, their little AI apps, like this is how they're already marketing. They're either reaching out to 100 different content creators and saying, hey, I'll give you 20% of any of the sales that you make on this app. Or they just create like 20 accounts and they're creating like mind drop videos with like GTA in the background with a single line of text talking about the app. And like, that's how they're selling it. Like that's already happening. But now the technology is available at the consumer level. It's just a matter of like who employs the technology first.
That's awesome. How do you see AI unfolding more broadly? You shared a video the other day of like an AI bit of content. And I think you presented the video in a way of like, oh, you won't believe this. Check this that has happened. And then it was an AI video you showed, but it wasn't actually real. Was
it the AI alien UFO disclosure?
Yeah. So yeah, how do you see that playing out in politics? I think from like the Harris campaign, particularly last year, I think we saw a little bit of kind of AI generation going on.
With like big crowds and that kind of thing?
Yeah. And probably from the Trump side as well. I don't know. But those are the ones I saw. How do you see that playing out in terms of kind of like, on a global scale in terms of politics? And do you think maybe like it's already been happening and we just aren't aware of it?
100%. It's already been happening. When things start to show up at the consumer level, it is the strongest indication that this technology has been used at like the non-consumer level for the last 10 years. And if this technology has existed and it's been used, why not think that adversaries like Russia or China or factions inside of the US or factions inside of both sides of the political aisle have been like using this? Maybe it's been more in the realm of like bot farms, but even in that context, you're still dealing with like AI algorithms that are like interacting in like the comments section. And as a result, when like I really genuinely think that dead internet theory has been a real thing for the last like 8 years.
Yeah.
And when you first started hearing about dead internet theory, it sounded like this kind of like kooky conspiracy. It almost sounded like it was like the Matrix, like being the thing that like was, commenting in the comment section. But it's really not that. It's really just these bot farms of like 800 phones on a wall that are all connected to like a single like thing. And the user is able to like take like phone 457, put it on his desktop, answer something, and then like go on to the next phone. And now at this point with like the rise of AI agents, who's to say that you can't basically like take that person, connect to those 800 phones, but instead of the person dealing with those 800 phones, they're dealing with those, like you replace it with an AI agent who can take care of the 800 phones and then also take care of another 800 phones and then also take care of another 800 phones and work 24/7. So, just everything that we're about to run into online, especially in the realm of comments, is going to be completely fake and manufactured. And it's going to be done for the purpose of making people inside of certain societies as miserable as possible. This is the same reason that Russia has been very, very protective of like shielding themselves from the outside world. The exact same reason why Chinese social media has shielded itself from the outside world. Now, we live in a democracy with free speech, at least, in the US, right? And as a result, I think it's like, if I had like more than 5 brain cells and I was an adversary country, I would use all of the resources at my disposal to like destabilize the psyche of that population so that I could ascend to be like the main world power. Who wouldn't? If that's the way that you're optimizing like your country, the way that you run things, like whatever, like who wouldn't? And that being said, I'm sure that the US does the exact same thing in different markets, different theaters around the world as well. But going into the next like 5 years, it's not just going to be comments, man. It's going to be video. It's going to be audio, especially with 11 labs. Dude,
it's good, man.
We're hosed.
Yeah.
We're hosed.
This is why I'm kind of optimistic though, because we learn often by contrast. A lot of what we spoke about just now in terms of relationships is like we learn what we do like by, it's not always the most efficient way to learn, but a lot of the ways we learn as species is through contrast. I hated that. That was painful. What would I prefer? And I do think that AI presents an opportunity to learn through contrast. I think it's gonna make us ask the questions of right. Well, this is AI, this is robotics, okay? What does it mean to be a human? And I feel like our bullshit detectors, our AI detectors, we're going to have to advance spiritually, personally, to meet it. I mean, I think, because otherwise, like you said, like we're cooked. We are a little bit cooked. So I do feel that it's going to force us to look the other way or look inside and grow spiritually. And I think that there will be kind of like a swing one way, and it's like, okay, AI is accelerating, but I think it will push us to kind of either integrate or to develop in ways that we didn't even realize that we could develop. I like this idea that we like all wake up one day and like AI is just like solved everything. It's just like, yeah, it's all done. Like you wake up and everyone's outside and it's like, yeah, it's done. Don't worry, it's all sorted. And like, what would you mean? It's like, yeah, what about? Yep, done, all sorted. Like everything's taken care of. It's like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, I know that's a bit, kind of silly, but I like.
No, not at all. I think that's exactly what's going to happen.
You're just going to wake up and it's like, oh yeah, it's all sorted.
Yep.
It's like, what do you mean? Yeah, it's just done. Like,
yep. Yeah, no, I think, so I'm really talking about like the next like 5 years, right? And maybe what I'm about to say happens in the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever. But I think that a lot of people think that when this level of disinformation becomes reality, that people are going to choose to walk away from technology in the same way that like they walked away from technology in like the Dune universe, right? They chose to like put AI over there. They only like take sand from worlds in order to do like whatever they're going to do, like psychedelics, and like we're just going to be like living kumbaya without technology. It's not that. I think more than likely what will end up having to happen is we will need something like AI in order to aid our ability to interface with the world, to figure out what is true and what is not. And that is going to be a really big fundamental shift in the way that we view society, because right now, whether you're on the right or on the right likes to pretend that it views the world as if it is objective and that there is objective truth. Because most of the time, evangelical Christians or whatever, like their entire worldview is like based on the existence of objective truth that comes from like the Judeo-Christian God, right? But when you actually see their lives in practice, these people are willing to flip-flop on just like about anything, right? The thing that I appreciate about people on the left is at least they have the balls and the willingness to come out and say, no, like nothing means anything. Like that to me is actually more honest than what most evangelical Christians do. So as a result of that, like we see a situation now being played out where there is no truth. There really isn't. There's no objective truth that anyone can really like agree upon. If you're someone on the right who's like arguing about January 6th, you're either the type of person who is arguing the point of view that like Trump did nothing wrong, that it wasn't an insurrection or whatever, because you genuinely believe that, and no amount of like court documentation or testimonies or anything like that that's presented to you is going to change your mind about that. Or you're the type of person who understands what the game is, and the goal isn't to be right. It's to basically like capture attention and to like get more people in your camp so that you can get more notoriety, influence, or money, right? So the right is already interfacing in this way. It's already been co-opted by like what I think most people would call like cultural Marxism or whatever, where there is no right and wrong, like just nothing actually means anything, blah, 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 right? And I think as a result of that, we are going to get to a place where this plays out over the next 5-10 years, where we become so miserable that we start calling out for essentially a techno god to come and save us. And the thing that I really hope that we're ready for when that comes is that we've undergone some sort of like spiritual transformation in ourselves in order to be able to correctly identify what type of like techno god we want. Because we've already demonstrated to ourselves that we are willing to entirely embrace a life fiction that is totally just like not attached to reality whatsoever, as long as that life fiction gives us what it is that we want in the short term. If a techno god comes along and let's say it's like employed by like the most evil company that you could possibly come up with, but we outsource all of our problems to it because it solves like all of our problems in the moment, then we just become Brave New World. And that's not, I don't think that's like a real great way. That is not going to lead to us taking that step forward in a billion years. So again, how do we optimize around creating a society that genuinely values truth, that genuinely starts to believe in the existence of objective truth again, even if that, I'll say this, a society that believes in objective truth that leads us towards the thing that allows us to continue taking the step forward. I don't even need it to be objective truth. I think you could even take my argument about like what allows us to take a step forward in the next billion years. Like maybe that is just a life fiction as well. But optimizing around that step forward is a life fiction that I feel like is worth participating in, rather than a life fiction that causes us to basically like die out in the next 2,000 years.
Love that, man. Create what you want. And yeah, the power of belief. Okay, so when this goes out, Trump will just have been inaugurated. I'm pretty happy he got in, because I try and stay out of left or right, but my kind of barometer there is what's good for the plot.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always happy just for the decision that was good for the plot. I feel like Trump coming in was good for the plot.
Cool.
How do you see the next 4-8 years playing out? Obviously, Elon getting involved, and kind of they're building this kind of really interesting team that is different from what we've seen before. You know, we're having Elon call out like the British Prime Minister, which is interesting. And I'm just curious, how do you see that unfolding over the next 4-8 years? What do you think is coming up?
I am not very hopeful over the next like couple of years. I think more than likely what's just happened is that a billionaire has just purchased an entire social media platform, posited it towards society as like the bastion of free speech. Even in reality, like he's like a few weeks ago, he just banned like a couple of people around the H-1B visa controversy. So we're already running into issues like that, but basically bought out a social media platform in order to get the person elected that he wanted to get elected, in order for that person to deregulate all of the markets that person is like involved in. Mm-hmm. Again, like it's a pretty good business decision. Like I'm not even really calling it out as like a super negative thing necessarily. And I think that other people around him are. I think that we're headed into a period of time where what would I say? I was very articulate about this like 2 weeks ago. Like I had this perfectly put together. I think that we're headed into a period of time where very, very rich people continue to get even like richer. And fundamentally, like on a philosophical level, I don't really have like a problem with that. But I think you can only pull apart society in two directions for so long until something eventually snaps. Now, that being said, I made a video about this a couple of weeks ago, right before the election, talking about how, at the very least, the right seems to have like a vision for the future that the left does not. The left is very good at kind of keeping things like moving forward in like a very basic way. Generally doesn't trust like the American populace. I don't think the right really trust the American populace all that much, but the vision that is at least articulated by the right about like moving into the future, like moving off of the planet, like all these different things. I think that's kind of cool, because even if you can articulate that vision of the future, even if you don't believe it, it's an indication that you at least understand that vision of the future in a way, and to then be able to understand it and market it to people indicates a deeper understanding of like how to actually make this palatable to people. So I really don't think that, the next 4 years are going to be really transformative in one way or the other, unless things just like fall off the rails. And now that like Trump has like a lot of people around him who just won't say no, like maybe we run into some sort of constitutional crisis as a result of that. I think that's kind of the worst thing that'll happen. But like past that, I don't know. I guess, again, this might be the least satisfying answer of the entire interview. It's just like I'm not really cheering super hard from the sidelines, nor am I like extremely perturbed. I guess that's a very wishy-washy answer, and I wish I had one that was better, but that's kind of where I am.
Your answer is maybe interesting. I mean, obviously people think Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. There's perhaps evidence to suggest that there's, these underlying currents of other people who are perhaps more powerful and, more the shadowy figures. Mm-hmm. So, maybe there's an argument there that, this has always been happening. It's just we can see it in plain sight now.
And there is a certain audacity to that does make me uncomfortable, though. You know, like when it has happened in the shadows, if it's been happening in the shadows, there's been a certain level of respectability to it, where there seems to be at least some sort of marketing campaign in place in order to shield the general populace from it. Whereas like someone has come along and not only figured out how to do it in the shadows, but how to co-opt the entire American and Western psyche into like the fabrication. You know what I mean? I to me, that feels like something more dangerous than things happening in the shadow. And again, this is like kind of has to do with like how you fundamentally see the world. Do you see the world as if it is controlled by a global cabal of most of the time Jewish bankers that control everything and are actively setting up the world, the pharmaceutical industry, the like nutrition, like the food that you put in your body? Are they actively trying to keep you down and basically keep you poor and stupid so that they can continue like making themselves like super rich? If that's like fundamentally how you see the world, I just don't know. Like I've run several like 15-person teams. The idea that one single person or like a group of like 12 people could keep the world so fucking organized in order to pull something like that off is just insanity. Like it's just like people who really view the world that way have just never managed a team of more than like 3 people. You know what I mean? Like it's just it would be a disaster.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I think if you view the world in that way, where everything is perfectly organized in order to keep you down, again, you just end up being the exact type of liberal that I think most people seem to espouse that they dislike, because you're going in with the same victim mentality, right? So I just don't think that viewing the world as if like there's been this top-down conspiracy from the beginning of time that's like there to control you is super useful. And if that is indeed the way that you view the world, going to the exact like opposite of that, like the shadow image of that, which is what I think we're seeing with like Elon Musk, who is essentially like the right's like George Soros.
Yep.
Right. Like is that the better like alternative? Maybe there are some more positive attributes, but it's just like it's to kind of bring it back to something that we were talking about here. Like me going from being the type of person who can't say no to other people to being the type of person who says no to people in order to like control them. Like that's not the solution. Like there's something in the middle that I think we can aim for, that we can aspire for.
Yeah.
That has maybe a little bit more nuance and a little bit more truth behind it. Than following a set of billionaires, one of which was just found to be lying about like being level 90 in a fucking video game. Like how crazy is that? Like Musk just he basically said, "Oh, I'm like the best in the world in this video game." Hopped on. His stats were like super, super high, and he was playing it, and he like clearly just didn't know like what the controls were, which is, if you want to create a marketing campaign in order to like appeal to gamers, cool. But all you have to do is just hop on and be like, yeah, I'm just trying out this game. It's cool. But to go out of your way to say like, I'm the best in the world on multiple podcasts, and then like clearly like have never played the game, like that's like the type of lying that like you run into someone, like let's say you run into someone here in Bali and they start lying to you about their like crypto portfolio because like they want to impress you. Like that's like pathological levels of lying. So again, it's just like, it gets back to what I was saying at the beginning of this conversation. Like, are these the people at the top of society, broken as they are these the best people that we could follow? Maybe right now, perhaps, yes. Maybe there aren't like real strong people that get people excited on the left. Clearly not. Otherwise, the left would have won in this election. But are these the people at the top of society that I think we can best aspire to emulate and to put forth in our society? No.
Yeah, this is a great point. And like, because these kind of like shadowy figure ideas, like the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all of this, it's like
the Matrix.
It's the Matrix, essentially. Like, I'm not of the opinion that it doesn't happen, but I'm also of the opinion, like, who told you it was bad? It's like, it just is. Like, people rise to power, they try and control it a little bit. Yeah, they have some prefer privacy, some prefer to do it more in your face. It's kind of like, I think the issue is that, again, we always view it through that lens of like, oh, they're evil, I'm a victim and I'm being oppressed, rather than look at like, wait, how can I take control of my own life? And there's a great book, Wallace D. Wattles. He wrote The Science of Getting Rich, Science of Being Well, The Science of Being Great. Another great book you should listen to called How to Promote Yourself.
Okay.
And it's like how to promote yourself authentically. Some really interesting stuff
Yeah, I'll check
from
that out.
He also wrote a book called A New Christ, which is very interesting about the actual character of Jesus Christ is perhaps warped in modern teachings. Fascinating character from like 1920s. But one of his whole philosophies is you must hold a point of view that everything is working out. You must hold that as a belief. And he talks about like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and it's like they're serving a purpose. We view it's because that's how society moves. You have to view it like a ship. Someone like yourself, thought leaders, people who are kind of questioning things. You're at the front of the ship and you're going, hey, maybe actually this way. But everything else takes years and years and years to catch up. And then the back end of the ship moves very, very slowly, which is why like the things we see manifest now, we need people at the front being like, hey, actually not so good. Let's course correct a little bit over here. But then we move very slowly. And, you know, these kind of people, the shadowy figures, whatever, they served a purpose. There was good that came from it. Is there stuff we want to get rid of? Absolutely. Okay, let's move the ship. But it will take time. And yeah, one of the big perspectives I've taken from Wallace D. Wattles is he has a great way of saying it. It's like, you must hold the opinion that, behold, it is all very well. And he says, behold, it's all very good. I have that as a spiritual practice now. Like every time I stub my toe, I'm like, behold, it's all very good. Like, and just use that as a reminder. But I found that very, very helpful for my own outlook. When I look at the news, when I look at Trump, when I look at Kamala, all of this stuff, I'm like, great, it's all working out, is it? And like, how can I spot in this turbulence and this bitterness and this kind of bitching that's happening? It's like, where can I see that this is all working out? Where can I see that this is all for the greater good? And it's helped me. It's given me a lot more peace because the alternative is like, oh shit, we're all going to hell. So I've found that as a belief really, really helpful. And to kind of like segue off that, what's one bit of advice that you've been given that has changed your worldview completely?
One piece of advice. Damn, these types of questions I like to have some forewarning. Okay, thanks a lot. One piece of advice. You
can rephrase it and rejig it if you'd like.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I think my dad gave me a pretty good example of, at the very least, of how to continue trudging forward in the face of just everything falling apart. My father has passed away at this point, but if he was still alive, in March of this year, he would be 101 years old. He was born in 1924, was a child during the Great Depression, moved to LA to deliver newspapers when he was 14. His dad died when he was 12. He fought in World War II, died on several occasions where they had to bring him back. Not in World War II, just kind of in random times throughout life. And this guy, again, he would tell me crazy stories where he would drive from Guatemala up into Denver, Colorado, on a motorcycle in the 50s. And he would get to a mountain pass and he didn't have the proper coat. So he just bought a bunch of newspaper and stuffed his coat with it and drove over the mountain pass during the snowstorm. Crazy shit like that. And, based on the amount, I guess you could probably call it trauma that this guy dealt with in his youth, with many of the things that I just described, seeing probably the hardest combat of the 20th century, right? There's no reason that my dad shouldn't have been drugged out and dead in a ditch by the time he was 30, 40. My dad was not the perfect person. A lot of people likely went away from interacting with my father in a way that they felt was very harmful to them. But at the end of the day, the fact that this guy pushed through and did the very best that he could for his children and for the people around him, and did not end up dead in that ditch from a fucking heroin overdose, is a testament to the human will. And I think as a result of that, that's been something that's been very, very useful for me to strive to emulate. I've been given the emotional opportunity to overcome the mountain in the snow with the newspaper and the coat. I have not been given that opportunity in a physical sense. So there's this internal mountain that I don't know if I'll even ever be given the opportunity to surpass what my father had to deal with in like the physical world, you know. But I think as a result of that, like it just always gives me something to aspire to, and it gives me a sense of hope, courage, and assurance that regardless of what comes my way, I'm going to be able to surmount it because I'm my father's son.
Bro, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Keep taking a step forward. Optimize for that.
Yeah, isn't it weird that my entire life is optimized around that step forward? And it's just the story that I just talked about was, my dad taking those steps forward. I've actually never put that together until now. So maybe the two are deeply intertwined.
Beautiful. Life's willingness for itself. I have one question before we wrap up. A bit of a selfish one, actually.
Yeah, sure.
So amazing. Everything you've built, awesome. Like I've seen your content for I think a number of years. Really, really love what you're doing, the brands you've built, how you've managed to obviously like monetize it. I know we've spoken about kind of the ins and outs of a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, as someone who's growing, who wants to grow this show, who believes in podcasts, who believes in conversations that they change the world,
mm-hmm.
what advice would you have for me for being authentic, growing the show, tactical, personal stuff, any advice you might have for me so that I can make this into something that, has a meaningful impact?
Do you care if the segment drags out for a little bit? Is that
Absolutely
okay?
not.
Couple of questions. How often do you do episodes?
This year, the commitment is release one a week.
Uh-huh. Do you think you have bandwidth for more? Either financially or just in terms of like how you spend your time?
Yes, I do. The bottleneck at the moment is the production and particularly like the intro side of things. Just finding someone who actually... I'm very, very particular on how I present, what the mission of all of this is, how I present the guests, the angles I kind of want to take. Often when I have like an intro done or a clip done, it's great for kind of more clickbaity, more broad content, but it's kind of training someone who understands the mission and understands what I'm trying to communicate here to convey that through content. So a lot of the time I'm going back and forth with editors. I'm also have a few things around being a perfectionist that hold me back, particularly like around the intros. I've gone through like a bunch of editors. I just haven't quite found someone or been able to train someone who can do that to a level that I'm satisfied with. So I'm trying to figure out how to solve that issue currently. Mm-hmm. And then if I can solve that issue, I can record every day.
And with the podcast itself, what is the purpose? I actually don't even know what you do for like a living. Is the purpose for the podcast to drive traffic in the direction of your business? Is it to just like have like really great conversations and like be for the purpose of like self-expression? Like what's the goal of going on?
Great question. So there's a few ways that I've already monetized it. I'm currently working with Darren as well, and we grow shows and sponsor shows as well. So heavily involved with Darren. There's a few other ways in the future that, there's ways I've monetized in the past. There's ways in the future that I will monetize. But the main goal of the show, it'd be great for traffic. The goal of the show is to have high vibe conversations that people will tune into, and like guests like yourself who come on and you challenge me. And hopefully I can push back on you as well. And we both leave the conversation feeling like we've advanced, taken a step forward in our own lives. And to just kind of like rawly expose that thinking process, honestly expose like, hey, this is where I am. This is the extent of my knowledge and current belief system. I'm pushing into this idea, and kind of like a space to be able to push into things and have ideas challenged. But yeah, the underlying core is like that high vibe conversations that will impact other people, and they'll leave thinking, I've learned something, I can go and apply that in my own life. And also another kind of side thing there is kind of about hitting the vibe. I really admire how some podcasts are very much like interviews, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like interviewer, interviewee. Great, cool. For me, I'd really like to create something where it's kind of, you experience other people through my lens of the world. And that I can become familiar for people as well. So I was reading comments on a Joe Rogan episode recently, and it was with him and Duncan Trussell. And they released it on Christmas Day. And there was all of these comments saying, hey, I've been alone this Christmas. I'm always alone. It's amazing to just have this episode and feel company. And I lost my parents. And there was all of these comments on people who are on their own. And they have a friend in Duncan Trussell and Joe Rogan. They have companionship. And I want to kind of merge, yes, the high vibe conversations, but I also want to merge a bit of that as well, where it's that feeling of familiarity of, whether you learn something or not, I guess you have that feeling of peace and that you're not alone and like a friend that you can tune in and spend some time with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. If you want to cut this next part, feel free. But just, I guess on a practical level, are you looking to like, is the goal of the podcast, like outside of like the mission statement, right? Is the goal to kind of build out sort of a personal brand on the side as you do your main thing, and then maybe those things marry in the future? Is the goal for you to drive traffic in the direction of like what it is that you do, or is the podcast like the entirety of like what it is that you do and like what you're trying to build out?
Yeah, the podcast will be the entirety.
Okay, cool. That answers the question. Okay. So then in that case, there are really probably 3 ways that you could drive even more traffic to like what it is that you're doing here, right? One is increasing the volume in terms of like how many like episodes you do. And maybe with that, depending on, what your resources are in terms of time and money, maybe you make a trade-off so that the intros don't hit as hard. Or maybe you figure out a way to like create the trainable systems so that editors can come in and be able to knock out like 3 intros a week. And maybe it's like 3 separate editors doing that, right? That's one. The other option is maybe going in the direction of what I was saying a little bit earlier in terms of creating a lot of short form using like AI, just like create like a digital likeness of yourself with like Synthesia or Arcad's AI, something like that. People are also using HeyGen and just using like ChatGPT to basically respond to whatever it is that you want to respond to in the world that's like trending on X or whatever. And it's not even the type of thing where you have to like source the stuff yourself and then sit down and like type out a whole bunch of shit. Like source the content yourself. And then from there, maybe you say, okay, I'm going to do 28 videos this week, 4 videos a day. That's how much I'm doing at the moment.
Wow. Yeah.
And what you do is you basically take those trending stories and you put them into ChatGPT and say, hey, here's the transcript of this particular video. Figure out what question is being answered as a result of this video and like distill it down to the question that's being asked. And then from there, you just like pose the question to yourself, record the answer to that question via audio note. You're already a great speaker. You can organize your thoughts like very, very well. You talk into a speaker about that specific question for 60 seconds. You take that audio note, put it into Descript, and then from there, take that transcript, put it back into ChatGPT, and like create some sort of like YouTube script around it. And then all you have to do from there is you can either show up in real life, just like film on your phone, the exact script that was just pumped out, so you don't have to spend time like actually typing it out, or you can copy and paste it and put it into one of these like AI video generated avatars or whatever. Integrate some B-roll in there so that it looks like a basic, like a normal edit that you would see on social media. And then voila, you have 28 videos a week that you're getting from short form, putting in that direction to give you a general sense of how much I'm making that exact system work for. It's for the editors, I'm giving them about 14 videos per week each to work on. I found that one editor can do 28 videos, but they become miserable. Like it's not sustainable, right? So 14. And then from there, if you want to outsource the whole ChatGPT Descript, like organizational aspect of it, as well as maybe the posting, you could get, like a social media manager here. And in total, probably somewhere around like 21 million a month in order to take care of all of that. And then the other option is going in the direction.
Rupiah, by the way.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, $21 million. Okay, great British pounds.
Yeah.
The other option is maybe going in the direction of what Diary of a CEO has done. I don't know if you've ever watched the interview with his channel manager, the girl.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, she does. There's 2 interviews that I've come across where she kind of describes the process where they're testing like 100 thumbnails or something crazy like that. I personally, that type of operation scares me. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm just much more at home when it comes to like organic growth than it is paid growth. And I know that, like, for example, Will Baker would say something very different. At a certain point, you have to transition into paid ads. Maybe this is kind of where I am with my brand as well. I'm about to maybe transition to paid ads. We'll see. But I just know that that's a possibility in terms of working out. I think the advice that I were to give you on that front would be a little bit stunted. So.
Yeah, man, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time. It's been an awesome conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it. How can people get into your world and find out more about everything you're doing?
Sure. So my OnlyFans is @antiprofit.
I've subscribed. It's brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. You can find me on, let's see, where am I posting now? I'm posting to YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and maybe Facebook starting this week, at anti.profit. Profit as in like religious profit rather than capitalist profit, except for Twitter, which is _profit_. So that's where you can find me.
Thanks so much, man. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Awesome. Nailed it. Cool. Great.